I want to welcome you guys to my YouTube channel, The Path So Despised. Um, my name is Lopini Tupo, and I go by the handle Sophos Ramus, means wise spoken words. And I want to be able to take this time and opportunity to thank the Heavenly Father for this wonderful opportunity to making this video. This video here, I'm going to be doing a presentation with these PowerPoints about a cult, group, or organization known as the World Mission Society Church of God. And I feel the burden on my shoulders to expose this religion, um, to warn not only the active members, but those who do not know anything about this church, so that if they do come in contact with these people in this group in the future, they would understand what this group basically all about, because they will try to tell you something that is completely different from what their intent is truly about. There's a disclaimer that I want to make clear first before I start. I acknowledge that the argument against this group are facts taken from certified public references and official documents that are publicly available to anyone. I was a member of this group in 2022, so I am speaking from firsthand experience and affirm that the doctrine and claims used here to identify this group are the exact teachings I was taught by this group as a member in 2022. I am doing this to inform those who don't know much about this group, especially the active members who are still trapped in the group due to fear imposed by the leaders and misinterpretation of scriptures used by this group to control their members. I do not intend to promote hate, but rather I intend to liberate who oppress, those oppressed by religious institutional bullying that this group exercises upon the simple and the helpless. As I mentioned earlier, this group's name is World Mission Society Church of God, a true definition of a cult. Now, this religion here um, has been basically obscure to many in the public's view. A lot of people don't know who these people are. They would probably experience or see them, witness them going around in universities and colleges in America, um, or just downtown somewhere, and they would wear these suits. You know, they're known for the men to wear suits and women basically wearing the kind of attire, like a dress, or how you would see, uh, Mormon women would dress pretty much, or I would like to say as cults. Here are relevant names of figures that has to do with this group and pertains to this group. And Unsung Hong is the first one. He is the main focus and prominent um, focus for the World Mission Society Church of God. Zhang Jia, I'm just going to go through these briefly because I'm going to be explaining these individuals anyway as we go on through these PowerPoints. Zhang Jia, Ju Chio Kim, Wang Won Sun, and Su Win. These are names that, as we go through these PowerPoints, that I want you to basically look out for as we mention them. Part one of my presentation is titled, How was the World Mission Society Church of God Religion Formed? So we're going to talk about here how they basically came about. Who is the World Mission Society Church of God? World Mission Society Church of God was established by Zhang Jia and Ju Chio Kim in 1985 after the leader Unsung Hong died of a stroke. Now, here are three names um, that I mentioned in the past two slides: Deng Ja, Ju Chio Kim, and the leader Unsung Hong died of a stroke. Now, when they mean leader in this point right here, what this means is that Unsung Hong was not the founder of World Mission Society Church of God. So we need to get this clear before we continue. He is not the founder, and we have records and proof and evidence to prove that. Now, the founders of World Mission Society Church of God is Zane Gil-ja and Ju Chio Kim, which they founded in 1985, basically after the death of Unsung Hong, which Unsung Hong basically passed away in 1985. The group was first identified as Church of God Unsung Hong Witness Association. Now, before they became known as World Mission Society Church of God, they were known as Church of God Unsung Hong Witness Association. That is a title that a lot of the members in the WMSCOG, I'm gonna address it. I'm gonna address the World Mission Society Church of God as WMSCOG, make it easier so I don't have to keep saying the whole name. So WMSCOG, before they became WMSCOG, they were known as Church of God Unsung Home Witness Association. Later, in 1997, they changed the name, and it was known as World Mission Society Church of God, or what we know today. Commonly translated from Korean to English as World Gospel Association. So we can automatically already at the beginning or at the outset of this PowerPoint, we can see that this religion is known for changing up their identity for purposes that will be revealed later on throughout this presentation. They changed their identity so that people would not recognize the falsehood that they are basically arriving or deriving from. There was a group, a second group that came out of Unsung Hong's original church called New Covenant Passover Church of God, which is led by Unsung Hong's son. Now, this it's important here to make this note that the founders of Roman Society Church of God are Zane Gil-ja and Ju Chio Kim, not Unsung Hong as taught by World Mission Society Church of God. The WMSCOG teaches their members that the founder of WMSCOG was Unsung Hong, but that is a blunt lie. That is an outright lie that like they that was not. There's no proof for that at all that he was the founder of this group because he died in 1985, and if this group was established in 1985, how can we say that he was the founder of this group, right? So that's something that we need to mark. Now, the sources that I'm using and a lot of the information that I have on this PowerPoint, I got from Michelle Cologne, who was an ex-member of World Mission Society Church of God. And she has a website called Examining the World Mission Society Church of God. Now, this website is such a blessing for members and also those who don't know about this group. And it gives you everything you need to know about this group. And this person, Michelle Cologne, was sued by World Mission Society Church of God, right? They tried to sue her for $12 million for defame of character because they believe that she was trying to destroy the image of World Mission Society Church of God by speaking the truth, by telling the truth. So this literally proves what a cult is all about. A cult is so infatuated with their identity and their outer appearance and how they want to appear to people, right? So that they can deceive people. So they try to sue this person, Michelle Cologne, and you can find her story on that on podcasts throughout YouTube, and go to her website and you can get more information on this person. And I just want to give all glory to God to thank you for Michelle Cologne for her strength and her faith and her boldness to stand up against this cult, even though they tried to sue her for $12 million and she won her case. They threw her case out um, because the plaintiff was basically World Mission Society Church of God, who tried to say that she was defaming their characters, and the judge didn't think that that was even the case, so they threw the case out and she won her case. So praise God for that. Before all these names, we're talking about the names, World Mission Society Church of God, the Unsung Home Witness, before all these names became their established identity, they were all under one roof of the original church established by Unsung Hong, which is in 1964, which is called Witness of Jesus Church of God, right? Then there was a schism, and the members divided into two groups. According to sources, the reasons for the division among Unsung Hong's followers after his death was that one group believed that Zane Gilja was the godmother, and the group that believed that she was the godmother was the Church of God Unsung Home Witness Association, as I mentioned earlier. And the other group who denied her to be the mother God was the New Covenant Passover Church of God, which is Unsung Home, led by Unsung Home's son. Now, the Witness of Jesus Church of God, which is a church that was established by Unsung Hong in 1964, basically out of that church came out these two religions: Church of God, Unsung Hong Witness Association, which was renamed in 1967 as World Mission Society Church of God, and the New Covenant Passover Church of God. So it's very important that we understand these two churches are the ones that came out of the original church of Unsung Hong. A court in Seoul, South Korea, documented the events surrounding the split. Right? In other words, there were in this court case, which was between WMSCOG versus G Won Tak. And this case revealed a lot of key, um, a lot of key truth, exposing the darknesses of this cult in this case. So we thank God for this case that happened. According to the court's records, the group led by Zane Gilda changed its name, Church of God Unsung Hong Witness Association, to Church of God World Gospel Association, in order, listen to this, to distance itself from Unsung Hong's failed prediction that the world would end in 1988. The World Mission Society Church of God suffered another embarrassment when their prediction that the world would end at exactly the last day of the year 1999 also failed. So during this court case between WMSCOG and G1 Tak, it was revealed that World Mission Society Church of God, or Zane Gilja, the founder, basically changed the name from Church of God Unsung Hong Witness Association to Church of God World Gospel Association, for the reason because she didn't want to be tied to the false prediction, or basically to the failed prophecy that Unsung Hong supposedly gave, that the world would end in 1988. So she didn't want to be identified with that, right? So she was like, oh man, let's change our name so nobody won't recognize that that was us. So this is basically signs and fruits of what a cult is all about, right? They do all this dodging and running and everything because they are not rooted in truth. They are rooted in lies. And because they're rooted in lies, they got to change up, they got to act a different way, and they got to do all these things to hide their true identity. The court case between WMSCOG versus G1 Tak happened and occurred on July 14, 2005, in the Northern Seoul Regional Court. And they ruled against World Mission Society Church of God. So in other words, the World Mission Society Church of God failed, or they lost the case. And we can get the full copy of this court case, the document, on Michelle Clone's website. So you can go check that out and read it yourself. I already read it. So I'm just basically informing you guys where to go. Key points exposed, revealed during the case. So these are key points that was revealed during the case between WMSCOG and G1 Tak. Number one, World Mission Society Church of God predicted the end of the world in 1988, 1999, and 2012. That's on page 6 and 7 of the court document. So in 1988, 1999, and 2012, World Music Society basically gave these false predictions, false prophecies, that the world would end in these three dates: 1988, 1999, and 2012. What's interesting is that World Mission Society Church of God denies this. But while they deny this, there are proof. As I said, you can find these on the website of Michelle Cologne. There are proof to show they have brochures that they have printed out to basically pass out to the world and to the members that the world would end. And this showed their false prophecy. And this was revealed during the case, during this court case between WMSCOG and G1 Top. Number two, Soo In, who was one of the key figures that I mentioned earlier, she was kicked out for claiming to be spiritual mother. That's on page 6. Unsung Hong refutes the idea of a mother god in his book, Problems with the New Jerusalem, the Bride and Women's Veil, page 15 and through 18, and the preface. So this member was Soo In. She was a member of Unsung Hong's original church, and she thought to herself that she was called to be the Heavenly Mother. And she had all these followers following her, and she even had books printed. And she was excommunicated from Unsung Hong by Unsung Hong from his church because she went about teaching that she was the spiritual mother. Now, in Unsung Hong's book, Problems with the New Jerusalem and the Bride and the Woman's Veil, Unsung Hong clearly makes it obvious to the readers that he denies and refutes the idea of a spiritual mother. So right, so he didn't approve of this kind of belief. He was against this. And this is very important for us to understand now, because as we go on, this is one of the major foundational doctrines that World Mission Society Church of God builds its church and image on, is the Heavenly Mother image, which we will talk about here soon. Number three, Ansang Hong's original church was indeed divided between the New Covenant Passover Church of God and World Mission Society Church of God, which stemmed from a schism over making Zhang Giljia spiritual mother. That's in page 7 of the court document. The World Mission Society Church of God changed their name from Church of God Unsung Hong Witness Association to World Mission Society Church of God in 1997. That's on page 6. So here we're getting the truths, proves that World Mission Society Church of God denied. They denied that they ever changed their name. They keep telling people that these names are other churches and it's not them. They're trying to basically push the blame on other churches and say that wasn't them. But here, during this court case, it revealed perfectly and clearly that they were actually that church that changed their name from Church of God Unsung Home Witness Association to World Mission Society Church of God in 1997. So let's mark that. So a couple other things that was revealed was 300 members of the World Mission Society Church of God disrupted a business, engaging in altercation. World Mission Society direct quote. They said, "This is the belief of the World Mission Society," and this is a quote that they quoted in the court. "We would like to be understood and accepted as a new religion and not as another denomination of the existing Protestant church." So, in other words, they didn't want to be identified with the Protestant church. They wanted to be identified as distinct, or pretty much how the growth of Gnosticism, the idea of Gnosticism is. Back when Gnosticism was basically starting to prevail, prevalent, spreading out through belief in religion, especially in the second century, first and second century in the Bible, Bible days of Paul and them. It spread it out. They were known, or it comes from that Greek word gnosis, where it's like this hidden secret or the secret knowledge that they believe that they basically acquire, as being who they are, that they're special people. Well, World Mission Society Church of God believe that they are sane, right? That they have special knowledge and special understanding of spiritual things. Despite the evidence, this is the spread of the World Mission Society Church of God. Despite the evidence that the group believed that the world would end in 2000, the World Mission Society Church of God traveled to the United States and filed for tax exemption in California in January of 1999. The World Mission Society Church of God went on to establish two other main hubs under which they would incorporate numerous locations across the U.S., Illinois in 2000 and finally in New Jersey in 2008. To date, the World Mission Society Church of God claims to have 7,500 churches. 7,500 churches in 175 different countries, and a total of 3 million members, right? A total of 3 million members. It is unknown if the World Mission Society Church of God subtracts the members who leave the organization from its calculations. Part two. This is the core beliefs. We'll be looking at the core beliefs of the World Mission Society Church of God. A Korean by the name of An Sung Hong, who died in 1985, was the second coming of Jesus Christ. During his lifetime, An Sung Hong fulfilled numerous biblical prophecies. Right? This is important. So the main teachings of World Mission Society Church of God is that An Sung Hong is the second coming Christ. Okay? According to Christian teachings and Christian theology, we believe that the second coming of Jesus has not yet occurred. But to World Mission Society Church of God doctrine, it already happened. And he came and he already is he came and he left. Being born in 1918, which was the day that An Sung Hong was born. So they believe that An Sung Hong is the second coming Christ that came to fulfill. Now, just to make a clarification, while World Mission Society Church of God is making these claims, An Sung Hong is no longer living at this time, right? So the man is not here to defend what they're teaching. They're sitting here using a dead man, right, and using him and as a person that is supposed to be God, when An Sung Hong didn't believe at all himself that he was a God. He didn't look at himself as Jesus Christ, as the second coming Christ, because we're going to look at evidence where it shows this stuff. A Korean woman, this is one of the other beliefs, named Zain Gil-ja, currently living in South Korea, is God the mother and spiritual wife of An Sung Hong. Right? We mentioned Zain Gil-ja earlier. Well, she's supposedly the God woman. She is the heavenly mother, according to World Mission Society Church of God doctrines. An Sung Hong designated Zain Gil-ja as God the Mother during the Passover observed in 1984. So WMSCOG, their belief is, or their teaching is what they teach the members, that before An Sung Hong died in 1984, the Passover that happened in 1984, he was gathered with Zain Gil-ja and some of the leaders, and he designated or ordained Zain Gil-ja in a private meeting that nobody knew about as Heavenly Mother. Now, this is interesting because for a cult like World Mission Society Church of God, who wants to be known for all the stuff that they do, why would they say that this was a secret meeting and not done before members, as her being ordained as Heavenly Mother, if An Sung Hong was supposedly the true God? It doesn't add up. World worship of Zain Gil-ja is required for salvation. That is their belief. The death of Zain Gil-ja will usher in the end of the world. So they believe when she dies, remember, this person is actually living today in Korea. She's still alive. So they believe when she dies, the world would end. And if she didn't choose you, then you're not saved. You're going to be condemned. That's their belief. The World Mission Society Church of God is the one true church. They pray in the name of An Sung Hong. So in Christianity, we pray in the name of Jesus. Well, in World Mission Society Church of God, they pray in the name of An Sung Hong. Now, mind you, An Sung Hong doesn't know any of this stuff. Right? He never, he never admitted or accepted this stuff. Or so it's like it's so weird and it's so sad that you can have a cult like this use somebody like him and just to like promote his ways and to promote their agenda and for them to build a narrative to try to make everybody follow what it is they're trying to teach. They believe all other churches are spiritual Babylons and they're filled with demons. They believe other churches are liars, heretical. Roman society's mission is to prove other churches to be false. That's their mission, right? They believe salvation only comes through works. Listen to this. Listen on how this goes against every Christian Reformed doctrine and teachings of Christian theology and Christology. World Mission Society believes that you can only obtain salvation through your works, good works, being baptized, observing all of the holidays. Basically, these are the feasts in Leviticus chapter 23. There are 7 feasts in there, starting from Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Weeks, Day of Atonement, Feast of Booths, right? Feast of Tabernacles. So there's 7 feasts in there that basically are considered God's holy feasts, and these are the feasts that the Jews keep. But according to World Mission Society Church of God, if you don't keep these appointed feasts, then you will not be saved. You will not receive salvation. Number 4 is tithing. You must tithe. That is a very, very, very important requirement for World Mission Society Church of God. You have to tithe. And then you have to recruit new members and strict attendance. Saturday for the World Mission Society Church of God is the correct day of worship, and they believe that Sunday worship is for the pagans. They believe that Constantine in 321 AD changed the worship of the Jews in Rome from Saturday to Sunday, because Rome is known as a nation or empire that worshiped sun gods, which is how we get the word Sunday. That's how we get the name for our day Sunday. It's basically sun, because of it was a sun god day of worship in Rome. Tuesday worship, also known as third day service, is also required, right? So every Tuesday, they consider that third day worship, right? So it's just like another Sabbath worship, and it's a very important day for them. Men and women they sit separately. So when you go to any WMSCOG church, you always see that the women will sit on one side, either the left or the right, and the men will sit on the opposite, right? The Passover. This is the most important feast in the WMSCOG cult. That is the seal of God and protects members from natural disasters. So the belief of World Mission Society Church of God that if you keep a Passover every year, you will be protected from sicknesses and natural disasters. Well, just to add to this, when I was a member in 2022, that was the year where COVID-19 was really affecting the world, right? So living here in Tonga, everything was on lockdown, shutdown. You couldn't travel freely, down the street or anything because everybody was basically on a curfew. So what was interesting, if they claimed that the Passover seals a member from natural disasters and sicknesses, then how come that during this time when I was a member, there were many members who had COVID-19? So this proved how fraudulent this cult is and how they sit there and try to make things to be real when it's not. It didn't. A lot of even the deacon that was, our leader at that time, who's actually a friend of mine, we were locked up together with in America, in prison. He was the deacon, our leader at the time. He caught COVID-19. So much for saying that the Passover protects you from these natural disasters. And the reason why they use this, just to add more to just this huge hallucination and this lie that this church spreads. The reason why they say that the Passover spreads you will protect you is because of what is revealed in Exodus chapter 12. When God was getting ready to plague the empire of Egypt, he told his leaders to tell the people to paint blood on every doorpost of every house of the believers, so that when the angel of destruction comes to destroy and they see the blood on the post or on the door frame, he will pass over that home and move on to the next. In other words, they would know that that house is a house that was protected and sealed by God, right? So this was basically to illustrate and point to the cross, that we are sealed and cleansed by the blood of Christ and protected from condemnation. But here, the World Missionary Society Church of God uses this as a literal blessing to say that they will be protected from these signs. So just in case if you do make it through some kind of a disaster, a natural disaster, let's say an earthquake or something, they can sit there and say, see, Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother has protected us because we kept the Passover. Now there could be times where that doesn't happen. How would they answer then, right? So these are just characteristics of cults, and that we must understand. All humans are angels that sinned in heaven and are born on earth in order to earn their way back to heaven, right? They believe that we all sinned in heaven and then we have to come here to work our way back to heaven. This is sort of like the doctrines of Mormonism. Mormonism teaches a similar teaching where they feel like we were once angels or spiritual beings, and that we're being sent here so that we can earn our way through works back to where we were supposed to be at, right? Family and love are temptation from Satan. They believe family and love is a temptation of Satan. They believe that the cross is an idolatry. But even this was not one of Unsung Hong's teachings. And you can read in Unsung Hong's books, which you can get from Michelle Cologne's website, and see that. They believe the Pope is the Antichrist. They believe that whoever criticizes the World Missionary Society Church of God, like I am right now, they believe that we are controlled by Satan and that we are slanders. So, in other words, they say that whoever talks about the World Missionary Society Church of God, about them being false teachers or whatever, they are basically children of Satan. Anyone who tries to get a member to doubt or leave the WMSCOG is basically used by Satan. So that's their belief. Members may only date with approval by WMSCOG leadership. Some marriages are arranged by leadership. Divorce is acceptable and may even be encouraged by leadership of a member, or is a divorcing a non-World Mission Society Church of God members, right? So they're saying divorce is acceptable. Members should avoid the internet because it is the true knowledge of good and evil. They believe the internet is where Satan spreads the lies, because they see that the Church of New Covenant Passover Church of God, who is the church that was ran by Unsung Hong's son, they believe that this church is spreading lies about the World Mission Society Church of God. This is where a lot of this information comes from. It's from their website, because New Covenant Passover Church of God has posted a lot of the false teachings that the WMSCOG are teaching, and they will go through it step by step so that you can understand how they have misinterpreted the Bible. Members cannot socialize outside the church. Along with keeping every Sabbath, 7 feasts, members are required to bear 10 talents. This shows you how much of a legalistic church WMSCOG is. They are considered the modern day Pharisees, pretty much, right? This is what they have to do. They teach this and they impose this upon the members. They need to bear 10 talents, which means they have to recruit 10 people, right? In order for them to go to heaven, right? So if I want to go to heaven, I have to get 10 members to join the church so that I can go to heaven, right? So this is how they believe it to be, right? And it goes on. These are just some of the teachings that they teach in this religion, right? Another thing is they don't allow the members to preach to the homeless or the disabled because they believe that the homeless and the disabled could be a burden to them. In other words, they don't want you to help the homeless financially, but they want all your money, your 10%, to be paid to them every week. Are you starting to catch the drift here? They don't want your money to be going anywhere else except to them. And this is the control devices of a cult. These are basically the characteristics of a cult. And you can go and look online for cult specialists who will explain exactly these kind of societies and the type of cults. Tithe. The tithe 10% of gross income from all your sources, including tax refunds. You have to get 10% of your tax refunds. It's the minimum rent that must be paid to God. If a member does not tithe, they are robbing God and belong to the devil. Right? Goodwill offering are also required in addition to the tithe offering. Parents must tithe on behalf of their children. Members must pray 3 times per day at a time designated by the World Mission Society Church of God. Members must pray at 5 a.m. every day, as God the Mother in Korea allegedly does. Attendance is tracked for each preaching meeting. In other words, every time you go to church on Saturday and on Tuesday, those attendance are tracked. And every month is sent to Korea, to the General Assembly, to keep attendance of who comes to church, who tithes, and everything like that. It's sort of like a checklist, right? When we were young in school, when a teacher would put a check or star next to your name on the chalkboard to let you know if you did good or whatever, this is basically what this is, right? When Paul spoke of the elementary principles in the book of Hebrew, and I believe in Romans and Corinthians, he's speaking of this kind of stuff. Elementary principles of Christ, of salvation, right? When you become a man, we move away from things that no longer is applicable to us, right? But in other words, here you have the World Mission Society Church of God are treating their members like little children, right? And it's just clear evidence of what a cult is all about, right? This is just more of the talking about how being an evangelist and how um, Mondays is basically um, a day that is set apart for them to do worldly chores like laundry and things like that. Part 3. Before World Mission Society Church of God was established, a cult in the making. Right? So we're going to talk about here before they became known as World Mission Society Church of God, before Zane Gil-jog came into the picture, before Ju Chyo Kim came into the picture. Here we're going to talk about the life of An Sung Hong. An Sung Hong was born on January 13, 1918. He was born into a Buddhist religion. It was active for 30 years. Now, you heard that correctly. He was a Buddhist for 30 years. An Sung Hong. This is the person that World Mission Society Church of God claims to be the second coming Christ. That he was a Buddhist for 30 years. After An Sung Hong practiced Buddhism for over 30 years, he began to attend Seventh-day Adventist Church in 1946. This will explain a lot of the teachings that World Mission Society Church of God follows. They follow Seventh-day Adventist teachings, eschatology, and things like that. An Sung Hong began to claim that he was receiving revelation from God, and the SDA, or Seventh-day Adventists, they excommunicated him in 1962. So An Sung Hong was believing and starting to think that he was getting these revelations, and Seventh-day Adventist Church wasn't taking that. So they excommunicated him. An Sung Hong believed that the truth of the early church would be restored through him, and that the second coming Christ, listen to this, the second coming Christ of Jesus would happen in 10 years. An Sung Hong did not claim to be the second coming Christ. He said that it would happen at a specific time, but not applicable to him. It was not applied to him, as what World Mission Society Church of God is basically doing. They're trying to say that he is the second coming Christ when he outright denied that he was the second coming Christ. In April 20th, 1964, An Sung Hong established his own church, right? As we talked about earlier, called the Witness of Jesus Church of God. Here's a picture here of An Sung Hong with his real wife. That's his real wife there. Her name is Wang Won Sun. And that's An Sung Hong. And this is An Sung Hong here. And that's his wife. And this is their son right here. Their son here is An Kwang Suk. Basically, supposedly, this is the one that was leading the New Covenant Passover Church of God, the church that broke off because of the schism that happened in the original church of An Sung Hong. These are just some of the beliefs that An Sung Hong believed in. He believed that Saturday is the Sabbath, not Sunday, right? Because Sunday is the pagan practice of the sun gods. He believes Christmas should not be celebrated. The Seventh-day Adventist eschatology he believed in. He believed in second coming Christ, right? He believed that the second coming was imminent, meaning it was getting ready to happen soon. He didn't apply that to himself. He was saying Jesus was going to come back, not An Sung Hong. Tithing is mandatory, is a mandatory practice. Roman Catholicism is the beast in Revelation. These are the beliefs of An Sung Hong. He believed some practices of the early church was lost throughout history. So when he believes, because of his belief that the teachings of the early church was lost, he believes that he has to restore. So basically, World Mission Society Church of God is a restorationist a religion. It's just like Mormonism and Seventh-day Adventists. Women are required to wear veils, and also Jehovah Witnesses. I'm sorry, that's another religion. That's a cult, and I'll be doing videos on all these religions, on Mormonism, Jehovah Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventists after this video. Baptism is the first step to salvation. So An Sung Hong believe that you have to be baptized, right? According to Christian theology, no. In our belief as Christians, we don't believe you have to be baptized in order for you to receive salvation. It's your belief in Jesus Christ alone, right? Faith through grace alone, right? Crosses are a form of idolatry. Passover and all feasts in Leviticus 23 should be kept, as I mentioned earlier. All the feasts that is mentioned in Leviticus chapter 23 must be kept. So this is why World Mission Society Church of God follows that, because An Sung Hong believed in that. An Sung Hong rejected the idea of Mother God. That's very important for us to remember. He rejected this idea. And this was in the book that I was telling you guys about. That's on Michelle Cologne's website. You can go and find it on there. The problem with the New Jerusalem. And the women's veil, and the bride and the women's veil. He wrote a book called The Problems with the New Jerusalem, the Bride and Women's Veil in 1980, stating his rejection of a mother God. Predicted the world would end in 2012, recorded in his book, The Bridegroom Was a Long Time in Coming, and They All Fell Asleep. So in this book, he predicted that the world would end in 2012. But no, it didn't happen. World Mission Society Church of God denies they ever believed or taught this, right? They deny that they even taught that this was going to happen, because remember, World Mission Society Church of God was already established in 1985, and according to An Sung Hong's prediction, World Mission Society Church of God carried on that belief to think that the world was going to end in 2012. And they printed brochures and passed them around, which is actually, you can actually see on Michelle Cologne's website, to prove that they were teaching the same thing. An Sung Hong wrote about the second coming of Jesus being imminent in his book, The Mystery and the Spring of the Water of Life. So that's the book that you will see that An Sung Hong didn't believe that he was the second coming Christ, but actually Jesus is the true second coming Christ. And you'll find that out in his book, The Mystery and the Spring of the Water of Life. It's clear that Unsung Hong believed he was living in the last times of the last one generation and that the last church would end in 40 years, right? So he was saying the last church would end, after he dies. These references of the second coming and the last one generations were removed from future editions of the text by World Mission Society Church of God. We're going to talk about this in the next few slides. Unsung Hong predicted that the world would end in 2012 in his book. The Northern Seoul Regional Court documented that the World Mission Society preached that the world would end in 1988, 1999, and 2012. These are the false prophecies of World Mission Society Church of God. Similar to this are the Millerite movement, right? Who is the Millerites? We all know who the Millerites is, right? They're the ones responsible for basically how the Seventh-day Adventist was founded afterwards. And they predicted William Miller predicted that in 1843 the world would end. So when 1843 came around, nothing happened. So they moved the date from 1843 to 1844. So when 1844 came around, again, nothing happened. So in history, this day is known as the Great Disappointment. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know about that. It's basically considered the great disappointment for Seventh-day Adventists because they gave these false prophecies. So we need to basically see the link here. Seventh-day Adventists. Unsung Hong was a Seventh-day Adventist and was excommunicated from them. So he basically inherited or he basically acquired a lot of the belief, the false beliefs and false teachings of Seventh-day Adventism, and he followed that, and he basically brought that over to his theology, and that false theology was spread over to World Mission Society Church of God, which is what we see here today. There's a link to Unsung Hong and SDA eschatology, considering that Unsung Hong was excommunicated from them, right? False advertisement. In one of the new songs, which basically is the hymn of the World Mission Society Church of God, one of their hymns, it says, sacrifice claims, it says this, holy is your sacrifice. That's the name of the hymn. This claims that Unsung Hong, and then these are the exact lyrics, his whole body seemed to be shattered. He could barely take a step. But here we see a picture of Unsung Hong and his family celebrating at a river. And it seems like he was not the suffering servant that the World Mission Society Church of God tries to depict Unsung Hong to be. Here's a blog that was written by a member of World Mission Society Church of God. It says this: Father Unsung Hong climbed rough hills and mounts. No one knew he suffered all alone, searching for us every step with pain. His whole body ached as he stumbled over stone, and he was feeble and weary with weary legs. How much in pain Father Unsung Hong's feet were. False advertisement. Here's Unsung Hong. Seemed like he was not suffering at all, right? Here's another picture of Unsung Hong celebrating his birthday. Right? It doesn't seem Unsung Hong was living the life that the World Mission Society Church of God is trying to depict or trying to illustrate for people to believe. Part 4. World Mission Society Church of God forged claims and misinterpretation of the Bible. World Mission Society Church of God members have been taught that Unsung Hong, here on the left, and Zangil Ja, right here, are God the Father and God the Mother, despite Unsung Hong never claimed to be God. Unsung Hong never claimed to be God, but World Mission Society Church of God teaches, and they use pictures like this to depict. This is a very popular picture in World Mission Society Church of God to try to basically get members to see that they were actually a married couple, divinely and physically. But there's no proof that they were ever married physically, right? World Mission Society Church of God claims that they are the spirit and the bride in Revelation 22:17 by showing to the members a picture like this one, claiming that they were married over the last decade, it was revealed to the World Mission Society Church of God members that Unsung Hong had a wife and 4 kids. He never divorced his wife, and in 2008, when she died, she was buried next to him with both of their names written on the same tombstone, with their children's name written on the back of the tombstone. So, for so many years, the members of World Mission Society Church of God didn't believe or didn't know that he actually had a wife with 4 kids. The members were led to believe that his only wife was Zane Gilja. So they can paint this picture that he was the bride and the spirit, claiming that they are the spirit and the bride, which is what is revealed in Revelation chapter 22:17. So they're basically trying to build their narrative, build their theology by false claims. And I title this False Marriage. Here's a original document of the marriage certificate of An Sung Hong, which is here in yellow, I highlighted in yellow, and Wang Woon Soon, here highlighted in the green. This proves that he was married to that woman, his real wife, with the 4 kids, and not to Zhang Gilda. Heavenly Mother, here's a picture of Zhang Gilda here with her first husband, or her real husband, her only husband, we might as well say, because she never was married to anyone else. This is her real husband that she had 2 kids with. Here's a picture of Zhang Gilda with her first husband. They later divorced because of marital problems, and Heavenly Mother and her 2 children remained members at Unsung Hong's original church. So this is the supposed Heavenly Mother who divorced her husband. If you claim yourself to be a god, I mean, why would you need to go through divorce if you're supposedly supposed to be a good person? Korea was filled with cults, which is true. In Korea, there's a lot of cults in Korea. A member of Unsung Hong's church named Soo-in declared herself to be Heavenly Mother, which we talked about earlier. Here is Jim Chu, Kim Ju Cheol, and Zane Gil Ja. These are basically the founders of World Mission Society Church of God, right? It was these 2 that decided to make Zane Gilda Heavenly Mother and claim that Unsung Hong designated Zane during the Passover of 1984, just before his death in 1985. So it was these 2 that orchestrated this lie that Unsung Hong in 1984, just a year before his death in 1985, ordained Zane Gilda to be the Heavenly Mother, right? Read on. World Mission Society Church of God claims that Unsung Hong wrote the book Problems with the New Jerusalem, The Bride in the Women's Veil about Soo In, and does not apply to Zhang Gilja. So in the book that Unsung Hong wrote to deny or refute the idea of a mother god, here World Mission Society Church of God is saying that no, he wrote that book towards Soo In, and he didn't apply that or didn't mean that for Zhang Gilja. Okay, now where's the proof to prove that? Sung Hong is not here to live. He's not living to defend himself. There are no published writings to prove that Unsung Hong even ordained Zhang Gilja as the Heavenly Mother. Again, you can find all this on Michelle Cologne's website. Here's the book, actually here. It's in Korean, but this is the cover of the book. The Problems with the New Jerusalem, the Bride and the Women's Veils, in chapter 7, where he specifically, Unsung Hong specifically stated that he denies the idea of a Heavenly Mother. Part 5, a weak foundation will collapse the building. This is how I title this. Why did the World Mission Society Church of God lie about Unsung Hong's date? What is the significance of Unsung Hong's baptism date? World Mission Society dwells on the 40 years of the throne of David, which is in 2 Samuel chapter 5:4 and 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 11. David began his reign at 30 years old. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 4. David reigned for 40 years, which is known as the throne of David. Jesus began his ministry at 30 years old. This is similar to David. David began his reign at 30. Jesus began his ministry at 30 years old. That's in Luke 3:23. But David reigned for 40 years, but we read that Jesus only had a ministry of 3 years. So what needs to be added to the 3 years to make 40 years? 37, right? So 37. So when we read in Luke chapter 13, verse 6 and 9, scholars believe that because it says on there that Jesus has been coming there for 3 years and there's no fruit on the tree, it's a parable of the fig tree. In other words, they presume that Jesus had a ministry for only 3 years because he died at the age of 33, and because he was baptized at the age of 30, right? And he started his ministry at the age of 30, and then 3 years from there makes him 33. So they presume that that's basically somewhere around there. That's as close as they can come with. So according to World Mission Society Church of God, they believe that Jesus did not complete the throne of David. He only ministered for 3 years. So there's a total of 40 years, a total of 37 years that's missing. World Mission Society Church of God believe that unsung home is the spiritual David. So let me go back up. According to World Mission Society, right here, according to World Mission Society, Church of God, there is a 37-year missing out of the throne of David, right? 37 years. So they're saying 37 years is missing of the throne of David to be fulfilled. They're saying Jesus didn't fulfill it. That's according to the belief of World Mission Society Church of God. Now, to make the numbers fit the scheme of the World Mission Society Church of God, they lied about Unsung Home's baptism date and said that he was baptized in 1948, so that when he died in 1985, people can believe that Unsung Home was truly the spiritual David who claimed to fulfill the missing 37 years that Jesus did not fulfill in his first coming. Now, this is the interesting part. The reason why World Mission Society Church of God imposes to the world and their members that Unsung Home was baptized in 1948, because if he was baptized in 1948 and he died in 1985, that's 37 years of ministry. So that would fall in line, or basically it would make much more sense that he did fulfill the remaining 37 years that Jesus did not fulfill in his ministry, because Jesus was supposedly preaching for only 3 years, right? So this is how they articulated this, cunning and evil, on how they take the throne of David, 40 years, and literally try to apply that to Unsung Home, his life. But here's the catch. Was Unsung Home actually baptized in 1948? No, we have the official records right here. Official records prove that Unsung Home was baptized. Here I got highlighted here it's highlighted right here in the yellow, 1954, not 1948. This is the official baptism certificate of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Busan, Korea. And this is a public record, so you can find this on Michelle Cologne's website, or you can go on public records in Korea and find this. That's where this is. That proves that Unsung Hong was not baptized in 1948, but in 1954. Basically, what 6 years, or 6 years after the date that World Mission Society believed that, or claimed that he was baptized in. So in other words, if anything, he didn't fulfill the 37 years. This is what we need to get at. He didn't fulfill that, right? And there's proof here that he didn't fulfill that. But not only that, It's a misinterpretation on the World Miss Society Church of God's part. The 40-year, the throne of David's 40-year does not mean, and it does not indicate a physical worldly throne. And we're going to do a little exegesis on this so that we can understand exactly what that means, right? We're going to disprove World Mission Society Church of God's interpretation of David's throne. We're going to use Peter's sermon that he did in Jerusalem in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 30 and 32. And I summarized it. It's God promised David. So when you go and read Acts 2, verse 30 and 32, these are basically, Peter basically used um, the Old Testament text of 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12 and verse 13, right? And he also used Psalm 16:10. Psalm 16:10. So in Peter's sermon, he summed up in his sermon these three verses of scriptures um, pertaining to David, basically to the throne of David, but pointing not to David, but to the eternal throne of Jesus Christ. And this is where World Mission Society Church of God gets it wrong. So God promised David, I will raise up one of your descendants to sit on your throne. That's in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12. Part 2, as a prophet, David foresaw that Christ would rise again from the dead, and after hearing that the kingdom would be forever strong, 2 Samuel 7:13. Why did David say, you will not abandon me to the grave, nor will you let your Holy One see decay? Psalm, which is what is meant, what is said in Psalm 16:10. Because he knew that the throne of David did not mean a 40-year throne of himself, which would end when he died. David realized that the eternal throne that God promised meant the throne of Jesus Christ, which said, I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever, which is what we read in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 13. I will establish the kingdom of his throne. I will establish his throne, the throne of his kingdom forever. He's speaking not of a 40-year term that World Mission Society Church of God claims, but speaking of an eternal throne, not a physical one, but a spiritual. First, the throne of David was fully fulfilled by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, born of David's physical lineage. Therefore, no further part of King David's prophecy needs to be fulfilled after Jesus. Right? World Mission Society Church of God believes that Unsung Home came to fulfill some missing years that Jesus didn't fulfill. But no, there is no further part of King David's prophecies that needs to be fulfilled. It was fulfilled. How? If you are to fulfill King David's prophecy, you must be born physically of David. The logic that Unsung Hong, a Korean, claims to be spiritual David cannot be established. King David's prophecy was fulfilled by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because he was resurrected. Now, this throne of David will be eternal, unending. So how can World Mission Society Church of God says that Unsung Hong came and was baptized on a false baptism, baptized date of 1948 and died in 1985, and it said that he fulfilled 37 years of missing years that Jesus didn't fulfill? How is that possible? Third, it is only a joke to divide the 40 years of the physical throne of David into 3 years and 37 years to fit into the life of Unsung Hong. Such people stir up interest with erratic ideas, then cause you to ignore the real serious problems in the throne of David. It cause you to focus on the wrong places and confuse you, right? Fourth, the prophecy of David's throne is pointed towards an eternal throne that will never end, right? 2 Samuel 7, verse 13. Not a physical throne that ended in 40 years like the natural David. Fifth, the apostle preached that prophecies David's throne was fully fulfilled by Jesus, his resurrection. That's in Acts chapter 2, verse 30 and 32. Six, if Jesus died like a natural David, and remained in the tomb, meaning he didn't resurrect, then the apostles would not believe that Jesus was the Christ, right? The reason why the apostles believed Jesus is the Christ is because they saw him resurrected. Did An Sung Hong resurrect? No, he's still decaying in his tomb. Isaiah supports the apostle Peter's interpretation of prophecy in Isaiah 9, verse 6 and 7. This is just to give more support for Peter's sermon. And I broke it down, instead of writing the whole verse, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and 7. Wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, increase in peace of his government will never end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice, righteousness from that time on and forever. Isaiah prophesied that Jesus would be given the throne of David and that his throne is an eternal throne, and opposed to the natural David's throne that ceased in 40 years. David was not talking about his 40-year reign. That is an assertion. That is basically an addition of teaching that the World Mission Society Church of God asserted into the text. And they have literally done eisegesis instead of exegesis to sit here and try to deceive people to get them to believe that this text is speaking about a physical 40-year reign. No, it's not. This is pointing to an eternal reign of Jesus Christ's throne, of Jesus Christ's eternal reign in this world and forevermore. There's more references on this in Luke chapter 1, 32 to 33, Acts 5, 30 to 31, and Romans 1, 2 to 4. You can find this on here. You can rewind the video after you watch this. Part 6 is the last part. This is the smallest letter and stroke has been removed. An Sung Hong is believed by World Mission Society Church of God to be the second coming Christ, who will restore lost teachings and practice the ancient apostles of Jesus and practices of the ancient apostles of Jesus during the Dark Ages. But did An Sung Hong believe this himself? An Sung Hong's book, Mystery of God and Spring of Water of Life, or better known as the members as the Green Book. They call this book the Green Book, is a book that is highly held as sacred in the World Mission Society Church of God. I used to own one of this book. I actually bought it, but I returned it to the cult because it does mean nothing. I can't use it. It's no use. It's not useful to me. So I gave it back to him, but I should have kept it because, as evidence to prove, other people how false this religion is. So in other words, this book is considered a sacred book to the World Mission Society Church of God. In other words, this is the very book that they changed and altered some texts and references from it, from An Sung Hong's original writing, the one that was published in 1993. This is the 2010 version. So the Green Book serves as an addendum, which is an addition to the Bible, according to World Mission Society Church of God, which is similar to how Mormonism compared the Book of Mormon to the Bible as a Second Testament. When we compare the Green Book published in 1993, which is the original one that An Sung Hong wrote, he didn't write it in 1993, it was published in 1993, with the Green Book published in 2010. This is the World Mission Society Church of God edition, the 2010 one, which is the one that I had. We find not small, but major changes and alteration to the book's meaning. So according to An Sung Hong's own beliefs, he never claimed anywhere in his writings to be Jesus Christ. This is fully a claim made by the World Mission Society Church of God to fit their false narrative that An Sung Hong is the second coming Christ. Here is An Sung Hong's original quote from the 1993 edition of the Green Book that was altered. Quote, therefore, by studying Moses' works, we can clearly find out the truth about the relations between Jesus, us, and everything that Christ will do in the future, and even the appointed day concerning his second coming. Right? That's in page 59 and 60. Now, this is the 2010 Green Book edition. By studying the works of Moses, we come to understand the truth which connects us to Jesus and everything Christ will do in addition to the time of his coming. That's in page 33. So what is missing here? The word future and second have been removed by World Mission Society Church of God in the 2010 edition so that they can force their narrative upon the members that Unsung Hong believed that he is the second coming Christ. So in other words, they took out the word future and second because those references will basically prove that World Mission Society Church of God is teaching falsely. So what they had to do was take it out from the 1993 edition and republish a 2010 edition so that people can believe that Unsung Hong did believe that he was the second coming Christ. Because in the 1993 edition, Unsung Hong points to who? Jesus. He doesn't point to himself. But in the 2010 edition, it seems like Unsung Hong is pointing to himself because they took out the word future and the word second. The last slide, does God make mistakes? And I want to just speak on here because we know as Christian believers that God never makes mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes because he's not a human being. But if World Mission Society Church of God claims that the Green Book is a sacred book, then why do they have to alter their God's writings? If they claim Unsung Hong is the God, and he originally wrote these writings talking about Jesus being the second coming and not himself, this is God writing this. If they claim that Unsung Hong is God, why would they have to change their God's writings? Why would they have to alter God's writings? In reality, and through evidence proven through this PowerPoint, World Mission Society Church of God is not a true God. It's not a true church. It's a cult that's trying to deceive people through false claims, false narratives. And I want to end with these few verses here. God always speaks in the Bible about the supremacy, sovereignty, and the unchangeable nature of his word. For my word will accomplish what I desire and will not return to me empty without accomplishing what I sent it to do. I paraphrase this, and that's in Isaiah 55, verse 8 to 10. My covenant and my word shall not depart from them, nor from your offering, nor from your offspring, nor your offspring's offspring. That's in Isaiah 59:21. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. Isaiah 40, verse 8. Not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. Matthew 5, verse 18. This proves, my friends, the truth that God is an unchangeable person, sovereign in all his ways, supreme. And when we know of sovereign God, the true God, we are able to identify the counterfeit. When rat poison is made, it's made out of 95% food. And they add 5% poison. So when a rat eats the food, the poison, they think it's food because they're tasting nothing but food. But they do not know that in the mixture of that 95% is a 5% of poison that will kill them. My friends, when cults and false teachings and false doctrines are being promoted into the world, the 5% of poison is in there. And if you follow closely enough, the teachings of World Society Church of God. They teach Jesus. They will proclaim his name. They will proclaim, the gospel as if what you're hearing is the true gospel. But if you don't know who the true God is, you will not recognize who the false ones are. You need to know the distinct characters of the true God so that you can tell the false characters of a false one. When a bank teller is trained by the bank to identify false bills, right, or counterfeit money, they train the tellers to recognize the true bill first, right? So they show the teller all the distinct characters of the true bill. So that way, when they see a false bill, if they see that those distinct characters are missing, then they can tell that that's a false bill. My friends, in order for us to know what truth is, we need to understand who the true God is, who is the Jesus of the Bible, who has an eternal throne, an eternal kingdom. And that is the kingdom that we are to inherit through faith and belief in his grace. His grace that he has saved us. That is the gift that we must receive, not earned. A gift is never earned. It's only to be received. And I hope that this message may reach out to some of you who came across this video. And I would like to thank the Heavenly Father and give him all glory back to him. In the name of Jesus, amen.